Okay, we're going to keep talking about factoring, but now we're going to talk about factoring trinomials when the leading coefficient is 1, right? So this number in front of our square term is 1. It's still a trinomial though, so I'm still searching for those two special numbers that multiply to give, remember this time the leading coefficient is 1. So 1 times 12, so it's got to multiply to give 12 and add to give 8. All right, so we can go down the entire list. Well, 1 times 12 is 13, so that's not 8. 2 times 6, 2 plus 6 is 8. Those are my numbers. We use these numbers to rewrite 8x as 6x plus 2x, or 2x plus 6x, remember. So I'll rewrite the polynomial. Doesn't matter which order I put those numbers in. And then I factor it by grouping. So I can only factor an x out of these two terms. Okay, that leaves an x plus 6 plus sign, so no worries. Now I can factor a 2 out of these two terms, which leaves x plus 6. Now here's my two terms, and they have an x plus 6 in common, so factor that out. And if I factor out x plus 6 from both terms, I'm left with x plus 2. Okay, so that's exactly what we were doing, right? But look at this. Okay. Hey, if our leading coefficient is 1, be careful, only when the leading coefficient is 1. If our leading coefficient is 1, once I find these two numbers, I can immediately put them in, and I don't have to go through these extra 2 steps. It saves me all of that work. If I can find those two numbers, I can just write my factors. Because this is 1x squared, the first one is always just going to be x and x, right? The only way you can get x squared is if you have x times x. Okay, now I can get 12 lots of ways. 3 times 4, 12 times 1, 6 times 2. So I have to find the particular numbers that work. But x squared is just x times x. Okay, so we've got a shortcut for factoring now when the coefficient is 1. So let's look at that. Okay, here's another one. Look, it's a trinomial, so I need my two special numbers. I need two numbers that multiply to give 18 times 1 and add to give negative 9. Okay, so 1 times 18, when I add them, it's not 9. 2 times 9 is 11. 3 times 6, oh look, 3 plus 6 is 9. I have the right numbers, but the wrong signs. Negative 3, negative 6. Now when I add them, it's negative 9. And because that leading coefficient is 1, only because of that, hey, I know that I can just put those numbers in my two factors that are going to look like this. X times x for the first term, and then minus 3 minus 6 for the second term. Voila. Nice, right? But don't forget, it's only when the leading coefficient is 1. All right, let's try it again. My leading coefficient is 1, but it's a trinomial, so I need two numbers that multiply to give negative 10 times 1 and add to give negative 3. All right, since I'm multiplying to get a negative number, one of those numbers has to be negative. So negative 1 times 10, and if I add them, that's 9. Negative 2 times 5, and if I add them, that's 3. That's the right number. Wrong signs, but right number. 2 negative 5 still multiplies to give negative 10, but 2 plus negative 5, negative 3. Awesome. All right, so my factors have an x for the first term, a plus 2, and a minus 5 for that last one. All right. Okay. Trinomial, I need my two numbers. Numbers that multiply to give 9 times 1 and add to give 3. Okay? So 1 plus 9 is 10. That's not, I don't need to write the 10. Whatever. Okay, 2 doesn't go into it. 3 plus 3 is 6. 4 doesn't, 5 doesn't. Oh, my next one starts, I'm already halfway done, right? Once I start repeating digits, I'm done. My only thing left is 9 and 1, but I've really already got that. Remember, if you cannot find these special numbers that fit both circumstances, then that's polynomial's prime. It will not factor, just like the numbers 7, right? Or 13. There are no factors other than just itself and 1, so it will not factor. Okay, what if it looked like this? It still has a leading coefficient of 1, but I not only have an x squared and I've got a y squared and a y. Remember, we said it's okay to have variables on both ends as long as they're squares, right? Technically later they can be any even number, but right now squares. And for every variable, every letter that you have on the ends, you have to have one in the middle representing it. Now, if I can find my two numbers, remember what we said about the only way that you can get x squared is if you had xx. Same thing with the y squared on the end. It just means you're also going to have a y and a y on the end. It's just the numbers we're trying to figure out. The variables, there's only one way it can happen, x times x, y times y. Okay, so I'm looking for two numbers that multiply and give negative 7 times 1 and add to give positive 6. Okay, so one of them's got to be negative. Negative 1 and 7. Hey, that's my numbers right away. So I just put them in. Negative. Now, I could put a 1 there, but remember, we don't have to put a 1. That's why there's not a 1 right here. Okay, negative 1 plus 7. And I've got my two factors. Okay, one more. Don't forget, we haven't even mentioned it during this video, but we've mentioned it in the last two over and over. Really, your first step is greatest common factor. Now, if you've got a leading coefficient of a 1, unless you've got the same variable, you're not going to have one. But notice this, my first step should be, do these numbers have any factors in common? Oh yeah, they're all divisible by 3. And what about these variables? Oh yeah, they've all got at least an a to the 5th, right? Now, if I could not factor out this a to the 5th, and I was started with an a to the 7th, I'd be done. I'd say, nope, don't find your two numbers. I don't care if it's got 3 terms or not. It's got to have that right format. Okay, greatest common factor first. Let's factor out 3a to the 5th. Now that leaves, if I factor a 3a to the 5th out of here, all that's left there is an a squared. Got a minus, so if I factor out a 3 from 30, that's a 10. And an a to the 5th from a to the 6th, that's an a. Okay, there's another minus, so if I factor a 3 out of 33, that's an 11. Oh, and the whole a to the 5th is out here. Oh, now that left me a trinomial with a leading coefficient of 1. So if it's going to factor, I need two numbers that multiply to give negative 11 times 1 and add to give negative 10. Okay, so one of them's got to be negative since I'm multiplying to get a negative number. So negative 1 and 11. Hey, if I add those, I get 10. Right number, wrong signs. I need it to look like this. Perfect. Because my leading coefficient is 1. Now don't forget this factor. That's just 2 factors we've already found. I know it's going to be an A and an A. And here's my 2 numbers. Plus 1, minus 11. Awesome. All right. Go have fun.